Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here at the AIGA Virtual Design Conference. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Walmer, and today I'll be talking about data sonification and the potential it has to transform the field of information design. I'll just start with a bit about myself. I'm a data scientist, illustrator, audio enthusiast, and a budding information designer. When I left my full-time data science job about 2 years ago, I wanted to find more ways I could combine my passions for art, data, and audio, and live a more interdisciplinary life. In my search, I began exploring the realms of information design, data visualization, acoustic ecology, and, in particular, data sonification. I love finding fun and creative ways to express data and information, and sonification has proven to be a unique and promising method for doing so. What is data sonification? Simply put, data sonification is the practice of taking data and representing it in the form of sound. But what does this really mean? Data sonification is part of a bigger category called auditory display, which broadly covers the communication of information through audio, typically through interfaces or devices. Think of the radio display in your car, voice assistant technologies, the tune that your washing machine sings when it's done with your laundry, etc. And within this, there's data sonification, which is specifically conveying data of any sort with audio. Most often, when people talk about data sonification, they're referring to a sonification method called parameter mapping, that is, mapping data values to auditory characteristics like volume, pitch, tempo, and so on. Consider the analogy of data visualization. While data viz means representing data visually, data sonification means representing data sonically. Take this chart, for example. It shows the Global Living Planet Index, an indicator of biodiversity over the last 50 years. Simple enough. We can see the clear decline in global biodiversity over time. But what about hearing it? You can really hear how much it drops. But there's so much more that you could do with this. Perhaps draw it out, make it more solemn, really curate the tone to convey the decrease. Let's hear a couple more examples. A data sonification piece that's often referenced is from the New York Times regarding the tragic 2017 Las Vegas shooting. It conveys the sheer speed of the gunman's outfitted weapon by comparing it to the speed of a fully automatic weapon. While done simply, it powerfully communicates the danger of weapon modification and the threat of gun violence more broadly. Another example is from the team at Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, called The Sound of Disparity. It's a sonification which conveys the lack of diversity in Silicon Valley tech companies. For this project, the Reveal team worked with a choir in Oakland to represent data in the form of human voices. Here's a segment of the piece focusing on company executives by race. This project is a really creative take on discussing underrepresentation of people of color and women in big tech. Currently, in the field of information design, there's a strong emphasis on visual modalities. Concepts around the visual display of information have been explored and developed, and we see work from contributors like Edward Tufte, who talks about escaping flat land and eliminating chart junk from data visualizations. Information designers are likely well-versed in data viz principles. Northeastern University's impressive design program offers a graduate degree in information design, but the curriculum consists of coursework such as visual cognition, visual technologies, and visual communication of information design. But what about other experiential modalities? There are, of course, huge benefits to the visual display of information, as it offers a vast canvas of opportunity for designers to tell a story, whether that be with color, scale, shapes, and beyond. Visual design has the power to be highly specific and detailed. It's also non-temporal, allowing the user to navigate non-linearly around an image, unconstrained by a start and end time. But it also faces pitfalls, such as disproportionate scaling of the data, unclear labeling, missing context, and oversimplification. So what about expanding beyond the visual and trying data design with audio? Let's dive into the power of audio. What are the benefits? First, sound is capable of stirring emotion within someone, sparking curiosity, and guiding a listener across a dynamic time frame. While a static visualization might come across as dry or lacking emotion, a sonic rendition may activate a more poignant reaction. It's like hearing a powerful speech rather than reading those words on a page. It can convey metaphors through our associations with certain sounds. It also carries the benefit of surprise and intrigue for audiences who may feel jaded by the same charts, diagrams, and layouts repetitively used. Second, expressing data in the form of audio makes data accessible to people who are visually impaired or blind. It opens up a huge opportunity for audiences to take part in information design without reliance on sight. In the exclusive realm of information design, or traditional design, sonification has the potential to transform design projects to be much more inclusive. As a third bonus benefit, the modality of sound allows a designer to guide the listener across time. They can present information in a storytelling format through narration, helpful context, and intentionally chronological elements. So how do design and sonification go together? The practice of data sonification is, by nature, a design problem. It requires creatively finding a solution for conveying some message or piece of information. The sonification developer must consider 1. Their own perspective in crafting a story, 2. The experience of the user or audience, and 3. The potentially fallible truths embedded in the data. With all this in mind, it's up to the designer to craft an aesthetic composition while providing the context to make it meaningful. There are some frameworks for tackling the design challenge of sonifying data. One framework is from Chapter 15 of the Sonification Handbook from 2011, which lays out a flow from the data domain to the sonic domain. The data domain is all about exploring the various features of your data, whether that be the broader shape of the data, continuous versus discrete data, events, polarity. The sonic domain is all about exploring how this information gets manifested into audio characteristics, such as pitch, tempo, duration, timbre, loudness, and so on. There's also the question of how you craft these elements together. For example, are there many layers of sound? Is it complex? What is the tone? Is it in a minor key and solemn, or major and uplifting? Does it have repeating patterns? Does it involve a human voice? There are many possible approaches, so it's a really big design space. In recent years, researchers Sara Lenzi and Paolo Cucciarelli, co-founders of the Data Sonification Archive, have delved into the synergy between design and data sonification. They point out that design-conscious sonification can be incredibly impactful, especially for communicating social issues. In their 2020 paper on this topic, they state, quote, "In data-intensive societies, with the complexity of social issues increasingly evident and inevitable, and the visual channel often overstimulated, sonification can expand the domain." They go on to say, quote, "Design could provide the framework to transform sonification from a scientific analysis tool into an independent medium that enables meaning-making to take place." End quote. They emphasize how sonification can be a great design tool for communicating ideas to the broader public. One of the sonification projects they share as an example is a sonic memorial to the victims at Orlando's Pulse nightclub. This is from Jim Briggs of Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting. It's a solemn piece honoring the lives of 49 victims killed at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando on June 12, 2016. It plays a cycle of notes representing each victim's lifespan, with all the notes ending simultaneously and abruptly. Lenzi and Cucciarelli reflect on this piece, quote, "Through a poetic interpretation of the simplest data set, the birth year of 49 victims, the authors create a sonic representation which powerfully conveys that there is beauty in those cycles and new life within every beat, until the soundscape is abruptly interrupted at the year of the shooting." End quote. Another resource from Lenzi and Cucciarelli is the Sonification Canvas, which provides a framework for design-driven sonification. It covers use case, that is, who are your users and what are the goals and context of your sonification. Next are mapping choices, that is, how are you mapping the data parameters to the sound parameters. Next is the sonification approach. Are you approaching the design in an analytical way or a narrative story-like style? And finally, there's the listening experience for the user. How will the sonic composition land on your audience's ears? This canvas is a great brainstorming tool for crafting your sonification ideas and being highly intentional about your design. Another design-conscious sonification project I'd like to share is called In Memoriam, COVID in New Jersey, from Adam Clark and Yan Wu. This solemn piece honors the lives lost in New Jersey during the COVID pandemic, particularly during the first year. It contains powerful musicality, as well as sonic indicators for individuals lost, accumulating over time. Let's hear an excerpt. This piece causes the audience to consciously pause, listen, and reflect. So, what's the current state of data sonification? Until now, data sonification has lived in a niche, academic, science-oriented realm, which has made it seem out of reach. But this is changing as more of the community acknowledges the need for design-conscious sonification development. There is a shifting perspective that sonification can be for anyone. Researchers Jordan Wirfs-Brock, Duncan Gear, and Jamie Pereira are helping to champion this idea with their Open Sonifications Manifesto. They encourage playfulness and exploration with sound and freedom of interpretation in sonification methods. They state, quote, "Sonification is not one thing. It's a diversity of things. We embrace and encourage curious approaches to exploring the world through data and sound. The act of making a sonification is just as, if not more, important than the final outcome." A friendly reminder, data can be anything. Personal data and experiences, open source data or public data information, observations, beliefs, events. It can even be a hand.
Dum 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 da 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 dum 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 dum.
This example was shared in Open Sonifications. Data can be geographical movement. Here's a sonification I created for the total solar eclipse earlier this year. This is for a project collaboration with the Georgia Tech Sonification Lab to create a set of accessible resources for experiencing the eclipse. For this portion, latitude gets mapped to pitch and longitude gets mapped to stereo image. Here's an excerpt showing the geographical reference points in the corners of the United States, each with different pitch. Here's what San Diego, California sounds like. Here's what Miami, Florida sounds like. Here's what Portland, Maine sounds like. I tried to include the narrative aspect here in order to really guide the listener. And here's the excerpt of the path of totality, including contextual cues as major cities are passed along the trajectory.
Austin, Texas. Dallas, Texas. Little Rock, Arkansas. Indianapolis, Indiana. Cleveland, Ohio. Buffalo, New York.
So let's talk about expanding the margins of design. Sonification lives at the margins because it's a niche and newer method. But as more designers experiment with data-driven audio, the bounding box of design will expand. The practice of sonification can break boundaries for both designers and for listeners. For designers, sonification can be a method that gets them out of their comfort zone, trying something creative and innovative. For audiences, sonification can shift expectations about how information can be consumed. It can be a pleasantly surprising format, especially in our highly visual world. Sonification welcomes individuals who are marginalized by the visual modality. Sonic information design is accessible for users who are blind, visually impaired, or have low vision. Audio is effective for stirring emotion, and if designers wield it well, it can be very powerful as a communication tool. Finally, the possibilities are endless, and the sonification canvas is vast, and that invites plenty of creativity and exploration for designers to transform the field of information design. So how can you get started with data sonification? Here's a list of communities you can connect with, such as the Decibels community, which is a supportive group on Discord, ICAD, which is the International Community for Audio Display, the World Sonification Chat, Georgia Tech Sonification Lab. Some tools and resources are also listed here. There are a range of tools and methods, some easy-to-use web apps that don't require any coding, and others that have a bit more of a learning curve. And there are some great learning resources out there, like guides from the Decibels community, the Data Sonification Archive, the Sonification Handbook, Open Sonifications. I can share all these links and references with you all and can also pass them directly to you if you just reach out via email. I also want to share about a fellowship project I'm doing with the Reynolds Journalism Institute. I'm building a sonification toolkit for journalists and storytellers. It'll be a website that includes learning resources, tools and methods, and guides for sonification. If this interests you, please get in touch so I can keep you updated on the launch of the toolkit. Let's connect. Here are the ways you can connect with me. Feel free to send me an email at aurawalmer@gmail.com or reach out on LinkedIn. Again, I can share resources from this presentation. I'm always open to collaboration and would love to keep you updated on the sonification toolkit that I'm building. Again, thank you so much for your time today, and a big thank you to AIGA for having me. I hope you feel encouraged to give data sonification a try, and I'd love to hear what you create.